it's so good of you to join us. And I got to the bit where I was about to say that, frankly, you don't need an introduction. And so instead, I prepared some highlights, if you will. You've been Secretary of State for Health. You've been Secretary of State for the Department of Culture, Media and Sport. You were the commissioner of the second and most significant Hillsborough inquiry. You served in both the governments of Blair and Brown. You're a huge music fan, promoting upcoming bands in our patch. You're a campaigner to end rough sleeping. You donate 15% of your salary to help this cause. You've brought, or you're bringing, buses back into public ownership. You've made travel for young people free, set out a bold ambition for Greater Manchester to be carbon neutral by 2038. Bike use, recycling rates are all up on your watch, and you won praise for the role that you played and led in arguing that business and workers needed proper furlough support, something the government later came in line on. You are a football nut, it's fair to say, though I whisper it, you're an Everton fan, and you're a newly elected mayor, re-elected mayor, winning every single ward in Greater Manchester with what is a huge personal mandate. And for my money, as a Labour man, some cause for hope for the Labour Party, but we're not here to talk about that. Today, I'm going to ask you, and we will ask you, what is the business plan for your new term of office? So, ladies and gentlemen, in a city of originals, the first mayor of Greater Manchester, the Right Honourable Andy Burnham. Welcome, Andy. Thanks for being with us.
Oh, James, what an introduction. My goodness. I'm made up with that. James, I'm conscious. How long do you want me to speak for a little bit, or do you want me to get into questions? Or
I think I'd like to get straight into questions, Andy, if that's all right. And
absolutely.
We can fold, but by all means expand on it. I'd love it if things that you say are reason to interject and to ask or
Definitely.
to counter in a sort of conversational style, and the team and colleagues and business colleagues are on the call are briefed as to how they do that and how I can call them in. But
right.
First question for you, Andy. We've titled this session, Does Burnham Mean Business? You see what we've done there. Really, my first question to you, what is your business plan for Greater Manchester?
It's to be the UK's leading digital city region, the UK's leading green city region. The first place to look if you feel that your organisation needs to level up and leave London. Obviously, we're not setting ourselves out to. I'm writing a column in the London Evening Standard these, James. It's not always about attacking London, but it is about saying how can we work together better as the North Pole and the South Pole of the country, and get a better balance of investment across the UK. I think Manchester has been a city of first, as you say, a city of originals. That has very much been in its history. I think we are a good place to do business. We are a pragmatic place, rather than a sort of overly political place, if I could put it like that. When I left Westminster, James, I was very conscious that I wanted to take a place first approach so that we create a space for business to really engage with us in terms of what we're trying to build in our city region. And my feeling on the first 4 years is that it's working. It really is working. There's an excitement running around. Even the pandemic has not been able to destroy that. We are Europe's fastest growing digital and tech hub. What a great statement for me to be able to make as mayor. We do have those green ambitions that you describe. But there's one last comment I'll make in answer to your question. By having a business plan for the place and having high ambitions for ourselves as an economic centre, I think Manchester has always had this thing where it's also been the conscience of the country at times. It's always been about industrial progress and social progress at the same time. And that is part of the business plan, because I think it's important, particularly to the 20-something, 30-something talented individuals who we want to attract to devote their careers to the great city region of Greater Manchester. I think they want to be convinced that we're a place that has the right values at our heart. We have the right ambitions around homelessness, around the climate agenda. So we're on at the moment with completely reshaping the city region, particularly from a transport point of view, and I can pick some of that up as we go on with the discussion. But there's a really exciting energy around Greater Manchester at the moment, and it's a privilege to lead the city region at this time.
Excellent, thank you, Andy. I'm going to come to our first question. Is Dave Harris on the call from Sunbelt Rentals, or one of his colleagues? I can see Phil.
Yeah, hi Andy, it's Phil Parker.
Hi, Phil.
I'm the CFO of Sunbelt Rentals, so we're an equipment rentals provider, and we're launching our 3-year strategy tomorrow. I'm at the JCB headquarters, which is why there's a big yellow wall behind me. So hopefully we'll sort of
not Liberal Democrat headquarters.
Not the Liberal Dem conference, yeah.
No, exactly. We're not affiliated with the Lib Dems. Quick question linked to what you were saying around the climate crisis. From a Labour perspective, what sort of legislation would you look to bring in to handle or to improve the climate crisis position? And then maybe more specifically, because we're looking to lead on ESG, we're looking to bring in greener products, electric products, hydrogen solutions, HVO fuel, all that sort of good stuff. There is a huge skills gap issue for us in terms of how do you train people to be able to service that growing need. So it's a two-part question, just tied into what you said.
Yeah, massively important question, Phil. So on the first part, I mean, you may not know this, but we recently, well, Friday, took a decision to create the country's largest clean air zone. So we've been working with the government on that. It will cover all 10 boroughs of Greater Manchester. It will imply massive change to road transport across our city region, but it will create business opportunity for those involved in new solutions for road transport, for retrofitting vehicles. So legislation, because that is driven by, if you like, by government edict, it's been imposed on us, but we're quite happy to do it with the right funding, because health has got to be a kind of absolutely first order concern coming out of the pandemic, hasn't it? And things we put up with in the past, we shouldn't put up with any more. So that's how legislation, or let's say government instruction, can drive change. But the way I would come at your question, Phil, is almost the other way around. I think we're not going to rise to the climate crisis through kind of the sledgehammer of national legislation, I don't think. The way we will do it is if we free up the places, the cities, the centres of innovation, to move more quickly and become the early adopters of the things that the rest of the country will need to do to hit the 2050 timeline. So we have a 2038 vision for a zero carbon Greater Manchester. I think this challenge, the climate crisis, will be better driven bottom up rather than imposed top down, because then I think you'll unlock what needs to be unlocked at the kind of ground level to build the networks of the kind that are needed to meet the second part of your question, which is the skills challenge. Because at the moment, the join up isn't there, I don't think, on the ground with relation to the skills issue. So let me give you a tangible example from Greater Manchester. Personally, I think coming out of the pandemic, accelerating our response to the climate crisis is going to be one of the best ways of solving the jobs crisis. You know, this is the way we've got to think of it now. Climate justice can mean social justice as well. You can get better jobs, better homes, better transport by accelerating your approach on climate, future-facing jobs particularly. So a great source of those jobs could be the retrofitting of buildings, domestic properties across the city region. That could create thousands of jobs for people, good jobs. And yet, the players who are needed to create the skills pipeline for that are not yet in the same room, and they're not kind of necessarily joining up. So obviously you're talking about the property industry, the housing providers, the skills providers, and the energy company. They're all a bit disparate, and we need them to have one conversation about the skills needs of that approach. So I've created something called the Retrofitting Task Force for Greater Manchester. We're meeting tomorrow, and it's getting into one room all of those players, and to start to kind of understand what the skills kind of requirement is, so that we can get our colleges starting to move in much more substantially to fill those gaps. And I'd be prepared to sit down with you and your colleagues, or any other colleagues on this call, to see if that same approach can be applied in other areas of the green economy. I think another example would be not just retrofitting, but passive house construction. I think that's another area where we need to see a massive expansion of skills provision. So, and you'll know of other examples that I'm not mentioning as well. So yeah, I think it's about creating new vehicles so that we can join up the conversation between industry, education providers, and where necessary, government bodies like the one I lead.
So Andy, how free do you make or how enabling, if you like, do you make your team to bring you strong examples on if they exist on a business by business basis? Because I think one of the opportunities of devolution and your mayoralty is to move away from the kind of Whitehall, very often closed shop, very often large industry that have always been there, rather than new or challenger or innovative organizations. Is part of the merit of your role to be in conversation with the challenger businesses or the new kids on the block?
See, I think the problem, James, is almost implicit in Phil's question, which is the national approach, which is often imposed top down through the Whitehall departments, creates quite a siloed approach on the ground, you know, where housing as a policy area is very different from skills. You know, they live in completely different worlds. And I think the opportunity, there's many opportunities of devolution. One is to break down those silos and join up the dots at a local level and get people around the same table. And therefore take more of a place-based approach, if you like, rather than a sort of policy silo approach, which often gets kind of imposed on us from the top down. And it also then allows a place first rather than party first approach. So you can build that sort of, you know, less partisan approach to things. So I don't know whether I'm yet in a position where I can convince everyone on this call that the evidence is there to support what I'm about to say. But I believe passionately that English devolution is, to the city region level, is starting to work. And this is where it's distinct from devolution to Wales and Scotland, James. It's a really important point to make. That has been devolution to the national level. And I think if you take the Scottish example, it's been very much about keeping it at the national level to build brand Scotland, if I can put it that way. You know, they've created Police Scotland, and I think other bodies are all, you know, at a national level. Whereas I personally believe the win for the 21st century economy comes from bottom up. You know, change delivered bottom up is better change than change imposed top down from national parliaments, and English devolution is offering this different way of making change happen, because it's more rooted in those local areas where you can join the dots between companies, education providers, and I think it's beginning to deliver results. I don't want to overclaim for it, James, but I think it's beginning to show that a better way of working is possible.
That's great. There's certainly a sort of aura around self-determination and cities and towns having a sense of self-determination. I can see that Doug has his hand up. Doug, I happen to know you're from Mid-Aero, otherwise I'd just be introducing you as Doug, which is no problem at all. But you've got a question for Andy. Do fire away.
Hi, Andy, and thanks, James. The aerospace industry continues to be key to the UK economy. And as you know, there's a growing demand for innovative design and greener flight, and certainly all the manufacturing that goes along with that. We at Mid-Aero, we play a role in helping companies to achieve and maintain standards for supply into the industry. And the Northwest in Greater Manchester is really strategic in that endeavour towards, well, maintaining demand of current aircraft, and certainly in changing the way that we produce things and become greener. And so I'm interested in, what's your vision and strategy for making Greater Manchester a hub for this future manufacture of aerospace, well, components and integrated systems? And how could we assist in that enterprise?
Well, it's a great question, Doug. And I absolutely agree with you about the importance of the aerospace industry to the northwest of England. A couple of things to say there. we do have a vision that goes beyond Greater Manchester, which is about making this place a centre of excellence in the green economy and in green manufacturing. So there is an organisation called Net Zero Northwest. I don't know if you've had any engagement with them yet, but I would encourage you to do so. It's very much industry-led. Siemens in the chair, but it's bringing together big players in the Greater Manchester, not just the Greater Manchester economy, the Northwest economy. Myself and the Mayor of the Liverpool City region, we may know we're great friends, but we are very much working together on this because I recognise that if he is to bring off his tidal barrier in the Mersey, which would be one of the first in the world, it will have benefits that will go way beyond the Liverpool City region. We're both working jointly on a hydrogen pipeline that will come up the Mersey into Trafford Park. So that's another great example of collaboration. And a specific in terms of Greater Manchester, obviously in your industry, it's where materials hits the sort of the engineering side of things, isn't it? So obviously everything that's coming out of the University of Manchester with regard to graphene and the other advanced materials that they're working on, there's a real opportunity there. We are currently looking at the possibility of an advanced manufacturing and materials centre of excellence at the Northern Gateway, which is the biggest strategic site in Greater Manchester, identified in our planning framework between Bury and Rochdale on the M60, M62. So we have big ambitions in this area. I think the way we will make it happen is that networking of organisations, isn't it, through structures like Net Zero Northwest, or creating that physical centre of excellence at the Northern Gateway, and allowing companies like yours obviously to work more closely in a research environment with colleagues from the Graphene, the Graphene Institute at the University of Manchester. So this is what we're trying to build, Doug, and obviously our team would be more than happy to kind of work with you to see how we could work in greater partnership. I think the aviation industry's had a terrible time, hasn't it, to say the least, and I think the prospects are not great, are they, if there isn't a sort of climate friendly form of aviation that starts to emerge quite soon. And this is a big win, isn't it? Not just the country, well, we need to try and make this win a British win, don't we? And if you've got something that with the scope for collaboration there, then we need to support you in any way we can.
Certainly is. Thank you.
Thank you, Doug. Thank you, Andy. So next question that's been pre-submitted is Simon Sharp, who's a member of the Jigsaw management team. Is Simon there? And yes, I can see you, Simon. Far away.
Yeah. Hi, James. Hi, Andy.
Hi, Simon.
Okay, I was pleased and unsurprised to see you make the pertinent and worthwhile commitment to delivering better homes for the region in your recent manifesto. Of course, part of delivering better, more sustainable and fuel-efficient homes is ensuring their heating systems actually match that ambition. Greater Manchester Combined Authorities secured £10.3 million worth of funding to run the Green Homes Grant local authority delivery scheme, which will undoubtedly contribute to that aim. However, with the dual targets of no new homes to be built with gas boilers after 2025 and the 2050 net zero target, or the 2038 net zero target that you're aiming for, outdated SAP ratings, a way of assessing energy performance, are actually encouraging developers to use less efficient heating systems, undermining the push for better homes in Manchester and nationwide. Through discussions with other combined authorities, we've seen an interest in moving beyond the current focus on heat pumps to deliver sustainable residential and commercial heating systems. With the potential for increased sustainability heating systems such as infrared can offer, do you believe that developers and public officials alike can and should be more ambitious in the technology that are being built into houses now that will ultimately have a lifespan of 50 plus years?
Well, I definitely think so, Simon, and some of the specifics there that are underneath your question, I think I need to get some of that detail from you, just so I can fully understand the issue that you're raising. When I've mentioned the planning framework that's still coming through in Greater Manchester, so we do have a a framework that is 9 councils, not 10, because Stockport decided to not to be part of it. But that planning framework does have very ambitious milestones within it towards 2038. The main ones being 2028 for all new properties in GM to be zero carbon. At that point, we're saying that we will not accept the problem. The problem has to stop getting worse at that point, if you know what I mean. And we only then are building homes that are, well, Sir Richard Lees was talking about this the other day, negative carbon. It was a concept I'd not really fully taken on board, but in Victoria North, in the big development that the City Council have on now, the north of Victoria Station going through Beswick and some of those other areas, there is talk of but not just talk, there are plans for significant numbers of passive house constructed homes. I think working with One Manchester, who you will know, and the idea is that they will be negative carbon, obviously, feeding back in. So we have big ambitions, but obviously we're in a sort of a bit of an interim limbo period here, aren't we, before they become, yes is the answer to the question. We need to be kind of dealing with the problem now and not making it worse. It is linked to the energy providers, isn't it, and what they can do if they can support the move to zero carbon. So Electricity Northwest and Cadent, who are our 2 big providers in Greater Manchester from an electricity and a gas point of view, they are both aligned to 2038. So they are working with Ofgem to get the necessary investment permissions to move to a 2038 timetable. And we think that's a unique arrangement, actually, of anywhere in the country, an arrangement of that kind. And we just increasingly need to get the property industry and the housing industry to buy into that same vision as well.
Thank you, Andy. I'm going to come to Ty Goddard. Ty's got a question that we've touched on a little bit around skills, but asks a specific question about the future of education technology. Ty, fire away.
Just a quick one, Andy. Hello again.
Hi, Ty. Yeah, good to see you.
And you, lovely to see you. You talked about digital region and how pleased you were about the leadership of GMCA around this issue. I was thinking about how can you influence and support schools to use education technology much more. I'm thinking devices, I'm thinking infrastructure, I'm thinking also that, in many ways, year 8 is too late. If you want to develop high-level digital skills, then as early as possible in our schools is the priority. Any thinking going on yet? I know we've done a lot of work in the past with various people from GM, but any more work going on around how you're thinking about the future in terms of ed tech and digital skills? Again, coming out of the pandemic. Yeah, really great question, Ty. It's moved to a kind of core equality issue, I think, is the way to describe it. I think we were all pretty horrified, really, in the middle of last year when there were reports of kids sort of clustering around McDonald's as soon as they get the free Wi-Fi in the first lockdown. I think what we've seen over the last year is just how wide the digital divide is, because obviously we're not making a political point, but I'm afraid the Department for Education didn't get devices and data packages to all of the kids to support home learning, and we saw that exposed very, very visibly for the first time, and it wasn't comfortable viewing, really, if I can put it that way, to see that exposed. And obviously we had Marcus Rashford on kind of food poverty side of things. Last year has exposed a lot, and if you think about it, given what we're doing today and what many of us have been doing for the last year, given the way our professional lives have changed, this can't be. Data connectivity has got to be a new utility, hasn't it? It's becoming as important as water, gas, electric. If you haven't got it, you're not in the room and you're not connecting to opportunity. Well, you're not connecting to the conversation and you're not connecting to opportunity. And that becomes critically important when we're thinking about our young people. It's often not the devices, I think, to be fair. It's often data, isn't it, that they can't access. Either way, we just have to be much more ambitious on it. So in terms of the new thinking, which is the question you asked, I was talking proudly, wasn't I, at the start about, you know, the UK's leading digital city region, and you know, London still, we've got, there's a bit of an argument still to be had there, but in some respects we are becoming a leader. I think we are in creative with Media City, but GCHQ having relocated their innovation hub to Greater Manchester, I think that's making us a cyber leader. We are a fintech leader. There's a lot of retail tech expertise. Yeah, we are becoming quite a powerhouse in this territory, and I'm proud to say so. But I'm really clear that that doesn't fully tick the box for being the UK's leading digital city region, because you've got to be leading on the social side. Remember what I was saying about industrial progress and social progress. And I think it might be attractive to the best brains in the digital sector to say, we're going to have a new vision for digital inclusion in our city region, because that, you know, if you're going to kind of say as well that you've got then the digital pipeline sorted out with the young people coming through to work in these expanding digital sectors, then you've got you're worthy of the mantle, the UK's leading digital city region. So what does it mean? I've said that we should have all under 25s online, basically. We should be a city region where every single under 25 is online. And I appreciate that's a big ambition, but why? But they're not going to succeed if they're not, are they? So, you know, this is becoming a sort of essential piece of enabling help that we need to give. Now, I haven't got the budget at the moment to pay for those computers and that data connectivity for everybody. But what I'm doing, Ty, is almost adopting the whole society approach in the same way that I approached homelessness in my first term, where I said, look, we can't do this with public budgets. We're going to need the private sector to step forward, the faith sector, the community sector. I'm saying the same with regard to digital inclusion. We've set up a digital inclusion action network. And the idea is that people come to that network with offers of kit, connectivity. You know, we build out the infrastructure basically to get all of our under 25s online. And that's what we're on with doing at the moment. So we can provide you with more information about that. But it is a complete rethink. Digital inclusion in the political world has been a sort of item 8 on the agenda, and you never actually get round to it. That's how it's been in meetings that I've been in for the last 10 years. It now needs to move right to the top, because if the risk is now, of course, there's going to be a permanent footprint in the digital space coming out of the pandemic, isn't there? Some things are never going to go back to real meetings, are they? Yeah. You know, they can be more hybrid anyway. Let's be honest. And if you're not helping people to be full participants in that space, the divides in society are going to get greater coming out of the pandemic. You could get social mobility going in reverse. You know, that is a real risk. And therefore, digital connectivity has got to be seen now as an essential part of an education package. If you've not got it, you are not enabled to succeed in the modern world. And it's as simple as that. So Ty, if anything you could do to throw your weight behind some of that work, we would love it. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Andy. Thank you, Andy. Thank you, Ty. Well, it's a nice link, because Jackie Cuthbert from Sunbelt Rentals has got a question relating to social value. Jackie, please, fire away.
Thanks, James. Hi, Andy.
Hi, Jackie.
Hi, so I'm head of social impact and comms at Sunbelt Rentals, and we're really fortunate that, you know, we're a FTSE 100. We've got some resource to be able to dedicate to helping our customers make more responsible decisions around not only just cleaner air, lower carbon, etc., but also around the social impact side of things. And one of the things that I've come to realise over the last year or so is that whilst there's a lot of goodwill out there along, say, lots of SMEs, lots of micro businesses, lots of charities and voluntary sector, etc., there is, we've sort of mentioned it a few times, that kind of joining the dot piece to pull together, and that will all be able to contribute a small amount and actually achieve a great deal. So, for example, we're working really closely across the region. I'm a Trafford resident. You know, we're working with Trafford Council, with long-term unemployed in Carrington and Partington. You know, we're looking at bringing Weapons Down, Gloves Up, which is an initiative over in the Liverpool city region, to help NEETs not fall into that kind of county lines, kind of gang crime, we're working with veterans, from working with the wounded, Project Recce, and working with the homeless, you know, on the embassy project down at Castlefield as well, trying to offer, you know, even if it's just a case of being able to offer support, volunteering time, or, you know, in our case, we can donate things like plant and equipment. But there's lots of companies that kind of haven't got the headspace to try and get into that arena, and obviously it's going to be critical for them winning work going forward. So I've noted down that obviously digital inclusion, we've obviously got the green and renewable space. There's lots of areas where I think we could get lots of goodwill and lots of companies together to kind of form a GM sort of social value kind of entity sort of going forward. I wanted to just double check whether there was anything that you sort of kind of know on the horizon, whether it was something you would be interested in lending your, you know, support to, and us really going and achieve something really special. Because we're over at Chadderton, we've got a 9-acre site there, and across kind of GM, you know, going right up to kind of Wigan and Trafford Park, etc. We've got about 400 employees, and you just think the weight of everybody kind of tipping in a little bit is going to achieve so much for the region.
Oh, well, it's fantastic what you're doing, Jackie, firstly. So, yeah, brilliant range of things there. But I absolutely get where you're coming from, in that social value is a bit disparate sometimes and fragmented, isn't it? And it's hard for smaller players to get involved. I fully understand what point you're making there. There is a GM social value network. We could link you into them. I don't know if you are aware of them, but certainly my team could link you into them. My take on this is, so I think we need to make it, simplify it, and focus on the real priority that I think we've got coming out of the pandemic. And I think it is good employment for people is the key thing. So the pandemic has exposed that there are many of our fellow citizens, residents, who have not been able to isolate as they've been asked to do so or needed to do so, because their employment is so insecure. And, you know, I often get this thing, well, why has Greater Manchester had so many cases during the pandemic? That is a very big reason why we have a higher level of cases. There's people who cannot take time off work because their work wouldn't pay them if they did that. Their work is 0 hours, it's very insecure, and it's not particularly well paid. And you cannot, in my view, build a strong society on that basis. But actually, you can't build a strong business, I don't think, on that basis, where your workers are so strung out with pressure. They're not going to be, I don't think anyway, they're going to be productive when, you know, they're worrying all the time, the mental health effect of that, because they're worried about their hours, they're worried about the pay. I personally think we need a longer term, better business model in this country. And that's why we've brought through the Greater Manchester Good Employment Charter. So that is a kind of specific document that is going to be given weighting under our social value procurement framework. So it doesn't mean you only win a contract if you're an accredited Greater Manchester Good Employer. It means you'll be more likely to win one. But alongside this, we're very much wanting this to be positioned as a pro-business agenda. Yeah. Because as I said, I think there's a business case for good employment. I remember when IKEA stood up at a living wage event in Greater Manchester and said paying the living wage had saved them money. And I remember the business audience saying, like, what? And they said, we've saved on sickness, we've saved on recruitment costs, productivity is higher. And there's a case to be made for, you know, for fairer working practices. So I think that is a vehicle that we will want to be saying, you know, we want more and more accredited Greater Manchester Good Employers. And I think that is a movement we can build. And bigger entities like yours can work with smaller entities who supply you possibly to say, look, there's a journey to be gone on here as to why this is in everyone's interest to do this. You know, your workforce will be more motivated, they'll be more productive. Everyone hopefully wins from an approach of that kind. And I think the approach we've had in Britain, where it's all been about the dividend every year and just ripping money out wherever you can, I'm not sure it builds strong entities in the long run. Now, I know that gets you into a slightly philosophical space, slightly political space. People might have different views, but I don't feel, you know, coming out of the pandemic, we need more secure work, better homes, you know, cleaner communities. These are the things that we should be prioritizing. And yeah, I'm really keen, Jackie, to knit you into the GM Social Value Network on those discussions.
Yeah, that would be
well, there we
awesome.
go. There we go, Jackie and Phil. That's terrific. I would hope perhaps if an invitation to go and see the good work that they're doing, Andy, came to you, that might also be
I'd love to
reciprocated.
I'd
yeah,
come over to Chatterton to see what you're doing, definitely. So no, please
awesome.
do drop an invite. I'll be there.
Awesome, thank you, Andy. Andy, I'm conscious of time. We've got two more very quick questions, but perhaps I can ask both questioner and
James.
answer.
I'm looking at Glenn's picture, and I'm getting thirsty with the match approaching. He's really tempting me with that bloody big.
I know. During administering all of this with great aplomb, I'm sure.
Is it lager or wine, Glenn? I was just trying to
bit of mixture.
As well as getting instructions and questions and comments from others directed during this webinar, my wife has texted me to say, what was the beer called you wanted? And I've even managed to answer that question during the course of the webinar. So I'm going to come to Tim Thornhill, who is from Tysers Entertainment. And Andy, this is something close to your heart and relates to government-backed insurance for live gigs, for festivals. I'm sure, like me, because you're a huge fan of them, you'll be looking forward to both the Heaton Park gig with New Order and Cortinas later in the year. Without any insurance for those gigs, they are unlikely to go ahead. So Tim, fire away with your pithy question, and let's try and get Leon into the a question as well. I think he might have to go, but Tim, fire away.
Great. Yeah, no, it's a brief one. So it's basically just to ask what's your take on the government's current inability to give government-backed insurance for festivals and live events and the other settings that need it so much to support the organisers of the events and the supply chain. And is there anything that's going on in Manchester that you know of that supports this?
Thanks, Tim. It's a poor show, isn't it? Because I think other countries have done it, haven't they? And I think, again, I don't want to veer too much in the political space, but there's a kind of reflection here that comes out of where we are as a country at the moment. This idea of the government being pro-town but anti-city. You know, we've got to watch this, because cities are going to need real help here to recover. You know, cities in some ways have lost the most over the last 18 months, and the events of the kind that you're involved in are absolutely critical to Greater Manchester. They are absolutely the heart of what we're about and our economy and the place we want to be. And we've got to get them up and running as soon as we possibly can. And you've got to put that kind of foundation beneath the industry to give it, given the nature of it. You know, people can't go out on a limb in this way, can they, without, being potentially exposed to very, very big costs. So that this industry needs extra help to restart. I just think there are certain industries that are particularly affected by the pandemic that I don't feel have ever been particularly recognized as such. You know, this live events being one, aviation being another, travel and tourism being a third. You know, you could list quite a kind of long line of them. And many of them are clustered in cities, and it is about the city recovery that comes out of the pandemic. So, you know, Sasha's been a big voice, as you know, Sasha Lord, for those of you who know Sasha, he's been a real powerful voice for live events, live music, hospitality over the last 18 months, and has been making the case for insurance, and we will continue to make the case, Tim. But the government doesn't seem to instinctively feel how important this is. There's a sort of a town's agenda, I don't know, but city recovery has not been high enough up the government's. They don't talk about it enough, and we need to hear more from them about all of this. So yeah, I'm in 100% with you, but you know, we'll obviously have to keep making that case for you.
Thanks, Andy. I'm going to bring Leon Cook in for a final question. Leon is the founder of Atticus Communications. Welcome, Leon, to your own webinar. Far away.
Thank you, James, and thank you, Andy, for doing this. It's been very informative thus far. I'm conscious that I'm keeping everyone from their Cinzano beer or Asti Martini, whatever they drink ahead of the match. So my pet passion is absolutely the built environment, and you spend a lot of, you answered in quite methodical detail around some of your plans, Net Zero Northwest. I mean, the retrofitting steering group, by the way, I can think of 3 contractors on this very call that would have an interest in that. Would love to hear more. in terms of, NG, the largest national contractor of scale that is retrofitting across the country, Jigsaw, infrared solutions, in terms of how these technological advancements are being allowed or not, as the case may be, to play a role in that enterprise, and Sunbelt, who are providing the kit to allow those contractors to actually go and build it. But I can think of 4 problems at hand, and I know this because I've had various conversations recently of late. Social housing decarbonisation fund is 3 billion, it needs to be 100. There are multiple levels of guidance across the built environment in terms of what people are actually building towards. There are elements around BRE and SAP, that how it hasn't been basically calculated for 9 years, and how that is stopping market participants playing a role. And they will remain nameless, but if you speak to Bays about something, they'll say go and speak to MHCLG. Speak to MHCLG, they'll say go and speak to Bays. I would say this, wouldn't I, but as the most high-profile Labour Metro Mayor and Ambassador of Regional Government in this country, what role do you think you can play to knock some heads together and produce some sort of joined-up government approach on, after the pandemic, the most important issue?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's a really good question, Leon, and Phil touched on it before. The skills issue is not like a problem we're going to have 3, 4, or 5 years down the line. It's a now problem. And I think, Phil, if I understand your industry, the skill shortage is hitting people, in the here and the now. So every day we're wasting here is we're losing ground, aren't we? I think I've been saying for a while that the COP in Glasgow this year is the big opportunity to focus minds and get the UK putting its best foot forward. But if I'm honest, it's not a political point. I don't think the coherence is yet coming out from government on all of this. We've had some help from them. So we have a public sector retrofitting programme worth about £107 million, which is moving forward. So that's council buildings, libraries, that kind of thing. But as you say, it needs to be much more ambitious than that. And we're almost doing it a little bit on our, we're doing the thinking at the moment without the full backing of UK government. So, but then again, to be fair, on the clean air zone, they have backed us with more money now, and that's moving forward in a better direction. So there are some signs of encouragement, but I do agree with you that the whole ambition, the focus needs to change, the whole ambition needs to change. And the silo culture needs to change, because that isn't joining up the dots at the national level. We're having to sort of almost kind of put things back together again at the ground level. The big piece here is skills. Phil mentioned it. I'll come back to it. It can't make any sense, I don't think, to continue to run skills policy from a national level, because it doesn't, if you're going to have local industrial strategies, as we've been encouraged to think about, you need local skills strategies to support them. And a big case that all of the Metro mayors are making, and it includes Andy Street in West Midlands and Ben Houchin in the North East, we all say we think we need control of post-16 education, so that when we sit down with the likes of Bill and other players, Jigsaw, and to get moving on this agenda, that we can give them confidence over the skills supply line, because we can commission it. The bit that we do commission, by the way, is adult education. And that has been a budget that's been very poorly spent, I have to say, over many years. Very, kind of often quite sort of tangential, sort of, painted. No, I don't want to be derogatory, but it's not necessarily been employment focused. It's been very sort of, kind of in a different space from that. We are beginning to think of our adult education budget, which is £92 million in Greater Manchester, so it's not insignificant, as providing potentially green conversion courses. So people who might be in a part of the economy that's not growing anymore, how do they quickly pivot into the green economy? And therefore we create, for kind of older people who've got a skills base, but need just to sort of take a sidestep into the green economy. So we've got some ability to control the system. But I think, if we're going to build a bottom-up 21st century economy, you need to put skills under the control of the big English city regions now. It's absolutely obvious to me. And I would appreciate, obviously, any support on this call for that. But there are things, what we can do is use our convening power at the moment. So if any of you come to me and say, you need to get a sort of round table going on this industry or this sector and join the dots between the different entities who need to be consistent, then of course I will facilitate that for you and, you know, use that model, you know, but it will be more soft power at the moment rather than the hard power I think we really need to drive the climate agenda. But hope that answers the question, Leon.
Thank you, Andy. And I mean, your record as mayor to date has, the driving force that you provided is very often around your use of the emotive arguments or the sort of soft power and how to execute that with a kind of less partisan, just more that it's an argument about what the right thing to do is. And I think that's why, you know, we've seen the reaction to your mayoralty these last few years. I've saved the most important question to last, and that is, what's the score tonight?
I thought you were going to say, is it coming home? And I was going to say no. That's not a political answer, that, is it? I meant to say, oh yes, with my flag behind me. Obviously, I'm fully behind England, but I don't know. Has anyone else got that feeling of dread in their heart right now in terms of what lies ahead for the rest of this evening? A few nods of a few. Jerry looks very optimistic there. So I'll remind you in the morning about that, Jerry, when you, well, maybe ye of little faith like me. I've just been through too many nights where we've all been up to the top of the hill.
Germany?
Pardon?
Do you think we'll beat Germany? Do you think we'll beat Germany tonight?
History tells me no, but my heart says hopefully. And it's Sean. Well, you're all up for it, so I'm the dream monger here.
It's outrageous that the most politicians' answer is on the simplest of
questions. I'm the one who should be saying yes 6-0, and you lot should be saying no. That's the way politicians normally work. But no, I'm an Evertonian, as you said. I think you mentioned that, didn't you, at one point? I'm just schooled to be completely pessimistic about matches, so I'm afraid it's hardwired into my DNA. But you can all tomorrow morning think of this conversation and thought, well, we need politicians with a bit more, yeah, they're going to go and do it. Let me answer your question properly. They're going to go and win. So let's leave it on that note, and we'll go and get a big glass like Glenn has been nursing all the way through this meeting.
That's cue for me. Yeah, I mean, yeah. It's cue for me to thank you all for joining this call and to thank you, Andy, for agreeing to be our guest on this webinar. Really appreciate everybody's attention, your questions, the responses that you've given, Andy, and to your team, Andy, as well, for making it possible and arranging it all. Thank you all very much. Come on, England, we're going to win. It might not be coming home, but it's en route. It's en route. It's en route.
It is coming home. You've said it now. Okay, I'm there. See you all.
Cheers, Andy.
Have a good one.
Thanks a lot, mate. Take care.